After Amnesia, my nemesis insists she's my girlfriend. After Amnesia, my nemesis insists she's my girlfriend. Blinding white light. I lay on the hospital bed, my head aching as if someone had smashed it hard with a hammer. The smell of disinfectant stung my nostrils, and the beeping of instruments sounded in my ears. Awake! A cool female voice came through. I turned my head and saw a delicate yet somewhat sharp face. She wore a white coat, her long hair casually tied back, revealing a slender neck. It was Lin Yu, my nemesis. We've never gotten along since we were kids. She's the eldest daughter of the Lin family. I'm the heir to the Chung family. Our two families fight tooth and nail in the business world. The two of us started competing even back in kindergarten. She snatched my toys. I tore up her homework. She tattled on me. I ruined her dates. Even now, having each taken over our family businesses, we fight tooth and nail in the marketplace. You are. I feigned confusion. Lin Yu raised an eyebrow and walked a few steps closer. She carried a faint scent of jasmine mixed with a disinfectant smell, which was strangely comforting. Ching Mo, you haven't really lost your memory, have you? I continued playing dumb. My head hurt so much. Doctor. Lin Yu turned to call the doctor, but I quickly grabbed her wrist. Her skin was cool, like fine porcelain. Wait, I put on a pained expression. Can you tell me who I am? What? What is our relationship? Lin Yu turned back, looking down at me. Her eyes were beautiful, like a night sky full of starlight. But right now, those eyes glinted with a light I couldn't decipher. You really don't remember anything? She asked. I shook my head. Lin Yu suddenly smiled, a smile that made my skin crawl. She leaned down, close to my ear, her warm breath brushing against my earlobe. Well then, that's perfect. I'm your girlfriend. I almost lost my composure. Has this woman lost her mind? Taking advantage of my amnesia? Really? I feigned surprise. Someone as beautiful as you is actually my girlfriend? Lin Yu straightened up, crossing her arms. What, don't believe me? Wanting to show you proof. Before I could say anything, she pulled her phone out of her bag and brought up a photo. In the photo, we were standing side by side in front of Ferris wheel at an amusement park. She had her arm linked through mine, smiling brightly. I froze. This photo. It was taken last week when we went to the amusement park to inspect a project. We were researching the park's business model at the time, so we had to pretend to be a couple to blend in. I didn't expect her to have actually kept this photo. Believe me now? Lin Yu put her phone away. When you had the car accident, I was calling you. The doctor said you swerved to avoid a cat that suddenly dashed out and hit the guardrail. I watched her spout this nonsense with a perfectly straight face, laughing inwardly. That day, I clearly lost control and crashed because I swerved to avoid a little girl who suddenly ran out. But since she wants to put on an act, I'll play along. I'm sorry. I put on a guilty expression. I made you worry. Lin Yu's expression stiffened for a moment, but quickly returned to normal. It's fine. Just rest well. The doctor said you need to stay in the hospital for observation for a few days. I'll stay with you the whole time. I nodded, but inwardly I was calculating. Why is Lin Yu pretending to be my girlfriend? What is she really up to? But this might be interesting. I like to see what tricks she has up her sleeve. Over the next few days, Lin Yu truly stayed by my side constantly, never leaving. She peeled apples for me, fed me congee, and even helped sponge bathe me. Every time she came close, I could smell the faint scent of jasmine on her and see the fine shadows her lowered eyelashes cast on her face. Honestly, if I didn't know she was my nemesis, I almost would have been fooled by her gentle and considerate act. Ching Mo, Lin Yu suddenly said one evening, when you get out of the hospital, move in with me. I almost choked on my own saliva. What? You have amnesia now. It's not safe for you to live alone, Lin Yu said matter-of-factly. I'm your girlfriend. It's only right that I take care of you. Looking at her serious expression, I suddenly realized this might be a good opportunity. Since she wanted to put on an act, I would play along to the end. I wanted to see just what she was up to. All right, I said with a smile. Then I'll be troubling you. Lin Yu's eyes lit up like a cat that had stolen a fish. She leaned closer and gave me a light kiss on the face. It's no trouble. It's what I should do. I froze. Her lips were very soft, carrying a faint scent of roses. The kiss was as light as a feather, yet it stirred up tumultuous waves in my heart. Damn it, I was actually a little moved. On the day I was discharged, Lin Yu came to pick me up in her red Porsche. She was wearing a beige trench coat today, which made her figure look even more slender. Seeing me come out, she walked over quickly and naturally looped her arm through mine. Is the paperwork all done? I asked. She nodded. I had someone pack up all your things. We can go straight to my place. I raised an eyebrow. So eager. Lin Yu shot me a glare. You have amnesia. It's not safe for you to live alone. Besides, she leaned close to my ear, lowering her voice. You're my boyfriend. How could we not live together? I smelled the faint jasmine scent on her again, and my heartbeat inexplicably quickened. This woman, has she gotten addicted to acting? Lin Yu's apartment was in a high-end complex in the city center, decorated in a simple yet elegant style. I noticed she had deliberately placed a pair of men's slippers in the entryway, and on a coffee table in the living room, there was a framed photo of us together. These are all our memories, Lin Yu said, pointing at the photo. Look, this is from our beach vacation. This was last Christmas. Watching her weave these stories with such a straight face, I almost burst out laughing. These photos were clearly taken at various business events we attended. She certainly knew how to twist the situation to her advantage. Where do I sleep? I asked. The master bedroom, of course, Lin Yu said, as if it were obvious. We've always lived together. I raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? Lin Yu's face flushed slightly, but she quickly recovered. What, are you shy? I smiled. I'm afraid you'll be shy. Cut it out. Lin Yu gave me a light push. Go take a shower. I made dinner. I walked into the bathroom and found it fully stocked with men's toiletries. From razors to shower gel, everything was there. I picked up the razor and examined it. It was the latest model, even the same brand I usually use. This woman certainly did her homework. When I came out of the shower, Lin Yu had already set the table. For dishes and a soup, perfectly presented. I was somewhat surprised. You know how to cook? Of course, Lin Yu said smugly. You always loved my sweet and sour pork ribs the most. I picked up a piece and tried it. It really wasn't bad. But I knew Lin Yu used to be a pampered young lady who never lifted a finger for housework. When did she learn to cook? After dinner, Lin Yu went to wash the dishes, while I sat on the sofa, surveying this home. I had to admit, she had put a lot of thought into decorating it. Traces of us were everywhere. If I didn't know the truth, I might actually believe we were a loving couple. At night, I lay in bed. Lin Yu was taking a shower in the bathroom. The sound of running water splashed noisily. I closed my eyes, but couldn't fall asleep no matter how I tried. Suddenly, a startled cry came from the bathroom. I immediately jumped out of bed and rushed over. What happened? Pushing the door open, I saw Lin Yu slumped on the floor, her bath towel half covering, half revealing her fair shoulders and long, slender legs. Her hair was still dripping. Water beads slid down her collarbone and disappeared beneath the edge of the towel. I froze. Lin Yu looked up at me, her cheeks flushed crimson. The floor was too slippery. Only then did I snap back to reality. I quickly averted my gaze and reached out to help her up. Her hand was cool, her skin as delicate as fine porcelain. Forcing myself not to look at the faintly visible allure beneath her towel, I helped her onto the bed. Are you okay? I asked. Lin Yu shook her head, but her brow furrowed. I think I twisted my ankle. I crouched down and took hold of her ankle. Her foot was small, with a graceful arch and cute, rounded toes. I gently pressed her ankle. Does it hurt here? Lin Yu bit her lip, her voice trembling slightly. I looked up at her and noticed her eyes were a little red-rimmed. This woman, usually so strong-willed, seemed exceptionally vulnerable at this moment. A strange feeling suddenly surged within me. I'll go get some medicine. I started to get up, but Lin Yu grabbed my arm. Don't go, she said softly. Stay with me. Looking at her glistening eyes, I suddenly realized that perhaps she wasn't acting. At least in this moment, her vulnerability was real. I sat on the edge of the bed and gently dried her hair. Lin Yu leaned against my shoulder, her breathing gradually becoming steady. I caught the faint scent of jasmine from her, mixed with the fresh fragrance of shower gel, intoxicating. Ching Mo. She called my name softly. What if you never remember? I was silent for a moment, then said, then we'll start over. Lin Yu looked up, her eyes sparkling. Really? Seeing the hopeful look in her eyes, I suddenly felt a pang of guilt. But the act had gone this far. I could only continue playing along. Yes, start over. Lin Yu smiled, a smile that made my heart race. She leaned closer and gently kissed my lips. Good night. I stood there stunned, watching her snuggle under the covers, leaving only the top of her head visible. This kiss felt more real, more tender than any before. I turned off the light and lay down on the other side of the bed. In the darkness, I could hear Lin Yu's steady breathing. I quietly took out my phone and opened an encrypted folder. Inside were photos I had secretly taken over the past few days. Lin Yu's planner, her computer screen, the expressions on her face while she was on the phone. I knew she was investigating me, just as I was investigating her. But after tonight, I suddenly felt hesitant. Maybe, just maybe, this act could turn into reality. The next morning, I was woken by the sound of Lin Yu moving around. Opening my eyes, I saw her hopping on one foot in front of the wardrobe, rummaging for clothes. Her injured ankle was still swollen, looking even worse than last night. What are you doing? I sat up. Lin Yu jumped, startled, and nearly fell. I quickly got out of bed to steady her. Your ankle is like that, and you're still moving around? I have to go to the company, Lin Yu frowned. There's an important meeting today. You're the CEO, can't you attend online? I said bluntly. No, Lin Yu insisted. This project is too important. I have to be there in person. Looking at her stubborn expression, I suddenly smiled. Then I'll drive you. Lin Yu paused, surprised. You? What? Don't you trust me? I raised an eyebrow. Even though I have amnesia, I still know how to drive. Lin Yu hesitated for a moment, then nodded. All right then. I helped her wash up and then helped her change her clothes. There was inevitably some physical contact during the process. I could feel her body stiffen slightly, the tips of her ears turning red. This usually assertive woman was actually quite cute when she got shy. When we arrived at the company, Lin Yu's assistant, Xiao Zhang, was clearly taken aback when she saw me. Mr. Cheng, how come you're? He's my boyfriend now. Lin Yu interrupted her. He'll be coming to the company often from now on. Make the arrangements. Xiao Zhang gaped, while I inwardly chuckled. It seemed Lin Yu had mentioned me quite a bit at the company, but only as her sworn enemy. After the meeting started, I excused myself to go to the restroom, but actually slipped into Lin Yu's office. Her computer was still on, displaying an encrypted file on the screen. I entered the password I had secretly seen earlier and successfully unlocked it. The file contained information entirely about a commercial fraud case from 5 years ago. I quickly scanned through it and discovered that the case involved the Lin family's capital shortage back then. Right? No wonder the Lin family suddenly faced a capital shortage 5 years ago. Back then, I thought it was because that major investment project of theirs had bombed, and I thoroughly mocked Lin Yu for it. Now it looks like they were plotted against, and the mastermind behind it planned it cleverly. Just as I was engrossed in reading, I suddenly heard footsteps outside the door. I quickly closed the file and pretended to be admiring the painting on the wall. What are you doing here? Lin Yu pushed the door open and came in, but she walked very slowly. Waiting for you. I turned around and smiled. Is the meeting over? Lin Yu looked at me suspiciously. What were you doing just now? Looking at your office decor. I pointed to the painting on the wall. This starry night is a fake, isn't it? The original should be in the Louvre. Lin Yu's expression relaxed. You still remember that? Just common knowledge. I shrugged. By the way, what do you want to eat for lunch? My treat. Just as Lin Yu was about to answer, her phone suddenly rang. She glanced at the caller ID, her expression changing slightly. I need to take this call. She walked over to the window to answer the phone. I pretended to be playing on my phone, but was actually straining my ears. Although I couldn't make out the specifics, I heard keywords like accounts and evidence. After hanging up, Lin Yu looked somewhat dazed. I walked over and steadied her. What's wrong? It's nothing. Lin Yu forced a smile. Just a little tired. Looking at her pale face, I suddenly felt a pang of sympathy. How about I take you home to rest? Lin Yu shook her head. I have a client meeting this afternoon. Then I'll go with you, I said. Lin Yu looked up at me, her eyes complex. Chung and Mo, why are you being so good to me? I paused for a second, then smiled. Aren't you my girlfriend? Shouldn't I be good to you? Lin Yu lowered her head and said softly, What if I weren't your girlfriend? My heart tightened, but I didn't let it show on my face. I'd still be good to you. Lin Yu looked up, her eyes slightly red. Why? Because. I reached out and wiped away the tear at the corner of her eye. I like you, That statement was half true, half false. I really was starting to like her. I liked her stubbornness, her vulnerability, and the way she seemed to be unknowingly putting real feelings into her act, even though she was clearly pretending. Lin Yu stared at me blankly, then suddenly threw herself into my arms. I could feel her body trembling slightly, as if she was suppressing something. Chung Mo, she murmured into my chest, if one day you find out I deceived you, will you hate me? I gently stroked her back. That depends on what kind of deception it is. Lin Yu looked up, gazing at me with tear-filled eyes. I lowered my head and kissed her lips. This kiss was more passionate than any before. Lin Yu stiffened for a moment, then responded. When the kiss ended, we were both a little breathless. Lin Yu's face was as red as a ripe apple, while my heart felt like it was beating impossibly fast. Let's go. I took her hand. To meet the client. Lin Yu nodded, letting me hold her hand. I could feel her hand trembling slightly, but her grip was tight, as if she were afraid I'd run away. At that moment, I suddenly felt a pang of regret. Maybe I shouldn't continue this charade, shouldn't exploit her feelings. But things had gone too far. I could only keep up the act. I just didn't know how this play would end. In the days that followed, my relationship with Lin Yu became delicate and complex. On the surface, we were sweet lovers, but underneath, we were both cautiously probing each other. One evening, Lin Yu worked late. I made coffee and brought it to her study, finding her staring intently at the computer screen. Hearing my footsteps, she quickly switched screens. Still working so late? I placed the coffee beside her. Lin Yu rubbed her temples. There's still a contract I need to review. I stood behind Lin Yu, pretending to casually glance at her computer screen. Although she switched quickly, I still caught a key piece of information. She was investigating the bank transaction record from the business fraud case 5 years ago. What are you looking at? So focused, I asked, feigning lightness. Lin Yu picked up her coffee and took a sip, her gaze slightly evasive. Just some old company accounts I'm organizing. I nodded, not pressing further. Her fingers tapped lightly on the keyboard, as if hesitating over something. I noticed the tips of her ears were slightly red, and her breathing was a bit quick. Chung Mo, she suddenly began. She paused. If you found out I was hiding something from you, would you be angry? I moved around to face her, leaning over and bracing my hands on the edge of the desk, meeting her gaze. That depends on what it is. Lin Yu bit her lip, seemingly weighing something. Watching her conflicted expression, a sudden impulse surged within me. I reached out and cupped her cheek, my thumb gently stroking the corner of her lip. Lin Yu, is something on your mind? Her eyelashes fluttered slightly, like startled butterflies. I felt her breath quicken, her chest rising and falling noticeably. Just as she was about to speak, her phone suddenly rang. Lin Yu snatched it up as if grabbing a lifeline, quickly answering, "Hello." I stepped back, giving her space. I couldn't hear the voice on the other end, but I could see Lin Yu's expression growing increasingly grim. I understand. I'll be right over. She hung up and hurriedly stood up. What's wrong? I asked. Something came up at the company. I need to go handle it, she said while gathering her things. I'll drive you. No need, Lin Yu blurted out, then, realizing her overly strong reaction, forced a smile. You should get some rest. I'll be back soon. Watching her flustered state, my suspicion grew. After she left, I opened her computer and entered the password I had secretly seen earlier. Just as I thought, she was investigating the case from 5 years ago, and she had already found some key evidence. I quickly scanned the files, discovering she had not only traced the original flow of funds, but had also found contact information for several key witnesses. It seemed she was very close to the truth. When Lin Yu returned, I was looking at a book I had picked up casually. Why aren't you asleep yet? Lin Yu walked in, her face a little pale. Waiting for you. I closed the book. How did things go? Lin Yu shook her head. Nothing major. She walked over, leaned on my shoulder. Chung Mo, I'm a little tired. I put my arm around her shoulder, felt her trembling slightly. Do you want to go rest? She responded softly. I helped her back to the bedroom, tucked her in, but Lin Yu grabbed my hand. Stay with me for a while. I sat down beside the bed, gently stroking her hair. She closed her eyes, her breathing gradually becoming steady. Watching her peaceful sleeping face, I suddenly realized maybe I should tell her the truth. But just then, Lin Yu's phone vibrated. I hesitated for a moment, but still picked it up and glanced at it. It was a text message. Ms. Lin, we found the accountant for back then. He's willing to testify. My heart skipped a beat. It seemed Lin Yu had already uncovered the most crucial part. If she kept digging, it would likely involve my father. I put down the phone, looking at the sleeping Lin Yu, my heart filled with mixed emotions. Although the Chung family wasn't directly responsible for what happened back then, there were indeed some underhanded dealings involved. Lin Yu's breathing grew steady, but I couldn't calm down. I knew she was getting closer and closer to the truth. If she continued investigating, not only would it involve my father, but she would also discover I've been pretending to have amnesia. I gently released her hand, got up and walked to the window, gazing at the city shrouded in night, 1,000 thoughts racing through my mind. The next morning, when Lin Yu woke up, I had already prepared breakfast. She sat at the dining table, looking a bit dazed, clearly still thinking about last night's events. Did you sleep well last night? I asked, trying to sound casual. Lin Yu nodded, forcing a smile. Okay. I noticed the dark circles under her eyes and felt a pang of guilt. She had spent so much energy trying to uncover the truth, while I had been deceiving her all along. What are your plans for today? I asked. Lin Yu lowered her head and took a sip of coffee. A meeting this morning and this afternoon. She paused. I need to meet someone this afternoon. I knew she was going to meet the accountant who was willing to testify. I put down my utensils, looking at her. Lin Yu, actually, What is it? She looked up, a hint of confusion in her eyes. It's nothing. I forced a smile. I just wanted to ask if you'd like to go see a movie tonight. Lin Yu's expression relaxed. Okay, I haven't seen a movie in a long time. I nodded, but my heart grew heavier. I knew that after tonight, many things would change. In the afternoon, after Lin Yu left, I sat on the sofa, phone in hand, hesitating whether to call my father. In the end, I dialed the number. Dad, Lin Yu has found the accountant from back then, I said in a low voice. There was silence on the other end for a moment. Then my father's voice came through. How much does she know? It's not clear yet, but she's found the key witness. I took a deep breath. Dad, should we tell her the truth? My father sighed. Mo, this matter involves too much. It's more than our family can handle. It might not be good for Lin Yu if she knows the truth. I gripped the phone tightly, feeling helpless. My father was right. The forces involved in that commercial fraud case back then were too complex. If Lin Yu kept investigating, she could very well get burned. I understand. I hung up the phone, having already made a decision. That evening, Lin Yu and I went to see a movie. In the cinema, she leaned on my shoulder, her hand tightly holding mine. I could feel her unease, but she didn't say anything. After the movie, we were walking home. In the night, Lin Yu suddenly stopped and turned to look at me. Mo, there's something I want to tell you. Her voice trembled slightly. I looked at her, my heart tightening. What is it? Lin Yu took a deep breath, seemingly gathering courage. Actually, I've been investigating that commercial fraud case from 5 years ago. I suspect that the Lin family's capital shortage back then was manipulated by someone behind the scenes. I nodded, not interrupting her. I found the accountant from back then. He's willing to testify. Lin Yu's voice grew lower, but I found some clues that might be related to the Chung family. I fell silent for a moment, gently holding her hand. Lin Yu, actually, Let me finish first. Lin Yu interrupted me, her eyes already red. I know you have amnesia. You probably don't remember these things. But if the investigation really points to the Chung family in the end, I don't know what I'll do. Watching her pained expression, a sharp pain stabbed my heart. I couldn't keep lying to her anymore. Lin Yu, actually, I don't have amnesia, I said in a low voice. Lin Yu froze, her eyes filled with shock and confusion. What did you say? I don't have amnesia, I repeated. I remember everything. Lin Yu's face instantly turned pale. She took a step back, her voice trembling. You've been lying to me all this time. I stepped forward, wanting to grab her hand, but she dodged away. Why? Her voice was laced with tears. Why lie to me? Because I was afraid you'd be in danger, I said urgently. The forces behind that case are too complex. I didn't want you to keep investigating. Lin Yu gave a cold laugh. So you pretended to have amnesia, claimed to be my boyfriend, just to stop my investigation? No, it's not like that. I shook my head. I admit I wanted to stop you at first, but later, I really fell for you. Lin Yu's tears finally fell. She shook her head, her voice choked with sobs. Chung Mo, how can you expect me to believe you? Watching her suffering, my heart felt like it was being cut by a knife. I knew I had hurt her, but I couldn't let her continue investigating. Lin Yu, listen to me. I stepped forward, gripping her shoulders tightly. The people behind that case aren't people you or I can handle. If you keep investigating, they might come after you. Lin Yu looked up, her tear-filled eyes meeting mine. So you chose to lie to me? I couldn't answer, only pull her into a tight embrace. Lin Yu struggled for a few moments, but eventually leaned against my chest and began to cry. I'm sorry, I murmured. I really didn't want to hurt you. Lin Yu cried for a while, finally calming down. She pushed me away, wiped her tears, a hint of determination in her eyes. Chung Mo, I won't give up. No matter who is behind this, I have to find out the truth. I looked at her determined gaze, feeling a wave of helplessness. I knew I couldn't stop her anymore. Okay, I nodded, but you have to promise me, you'll be careful. Lin Yu looked at me, her expression complex. Will you still stay with me? I held her hand, nodding solemnly. I will always be with you, no matter what happens. A flicker of emotion crossed Lin Yu's eyes. She leaned gently against my shoulder and whispered, Chung Mo, actually, I suspected long ago that you hadn't lost your memory. I was taken aback for a moment. How did you know? Lin Yu chuckled softly. Your act was too convincing. It actually made me feel something was off. Besides, she paused. The way you looked at me each time, it wasn't like someone with amnesia. I smiled resignedly. So you knew all along. Lin Yu lifted her head, a hint of mischief in her eyes. So, how are you planning to make it up to me? Looking at her playful expression, my heart softened. I lowered my head and captured her lips in a kiss, deeper and more passionate than any before. Lin Yu responded, her hands wrapping around my neck. In the night, our figures clung together tightly, as if wanting to merge into each other's very being. I knew, from that moment on, there were no more secrets between us. After returning home, Lin Yu took my hand, a hint of shyness in her eyes. Chung Mo, tonight. I understood her meaning, my heart fluttering. I gently lifted her into my arms and walked towards the bedroom. That night, we crossed the final boundary in our relationship. In each other's soft embrace, we found our truest selves. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the curtains. I opened my eyes to see Lin Yu nestled in my arms, sleeping soundly. I gently stroked her hair, my heart filled with warmth. Chung Mo. Lin Yu sleepily opened her eyes, her voice soft and tender. I'm here. I lowered my head and kissed her forehead. Sleep a little longer. Lin Yu shook her head, leaning against my shoulder. I want to face everything with you. I held her hand and nodded solemnly. Okay, together. After that night, Lin Yu and I became even closer. We no longer hid our feelings, treating each other with honesty and facing the future challenges together. However, the opposition from our families lay like a great mountain between us. One evening, Lin Yu and I were sitting on the balcony, looking at the city's night view. She leaned against my shoulder and said softly, Chung Mo, my dad found out about us. My heart tightened. What did he say? Lin Yu sighed. He's furious. He said the feud between the Chung and Lin families isn't easily resolved. He also said, what else? I pressed. He said if we insist on being together, he'll disown me. Lin Yu's voice choked up. I gripped her hand tightly. Lin Yu, no matter what happens, I'll be with you. Lin Yu looked up, tears glistening in her eyes. But I don't want to lose my family. I was silent for a moment. Then an idea suddenly struck me. Lin Yu, what if we had a child? Lin Yu was stunned for a second, then immediately understood my meaning. Her face instantly flushed red. You mean? I nodded. If we have a child, your father might soften. After all, he wouldn't want to see his own grandchild without a complete family. Lin Yu hesitated for a moment, then finally nodded. Okay, let's try. In the following days, we began preparing for this plan. We grew even closer, taking greater care to avoid the notice of our families. Finally, 2 months later, Lin Yu excitedly told me. Cheng Mo, I'm pregnant. Thrilled, I hugged her tightly. That's wonderful. However, when we told Lin Yu's father the news, his reaction took us completely by surprise. You, Father Lin trembled with anger. How could you? Lin Yu knelt on the ground and said, Dad, I know we were wrong, but the child is innocent. Please, give us your blessing. Lin Yu's father was silent for a very long time, looking at the finest heir standing before him. Finally, he sighed, Forget it, forget it. Since things have come to this, there's nothing more I can say. You, figure it out yourselves. Lin Yu and I looked at each other and smiled. The great weight in our hearts finally lifted. But when I told my father the news, I hadn't expected him to slam his hand on the table and shoot to his feet. Just as I braced myself for a lecture, I heard my father quietly give me a thumbs up. Son, well done. Hearing my old father's words, I was completely dumbfounded, my mind filled with question marks. Old Lin, that old rascal. We've been fighting openly and scheming secretly for over a decade. Who would have thought? Brilliant. My father, his face flushed, muttered to himself, letting out strange, cackles when he got excited. Little E quickly, bring out that treasured bottle of wine I've been saving. I need to go see my in-laws. Watching my father instruct his assistant to fetch the wine, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Just as I wondered if I was hallucinating, my father suddenly slapped the back of my head. What are you still standing there dazed for? Hurry up, change into a suit, and go see your parents-in-law. Oh. On the wedding day, Lin Yu wore a pristine white wedding gown, looking breathtakingly beautiful. I took her hand, walked down the aisle, and in the presence of our friends and family, we made our lifelong vows. I do, we said in unison. After the wedding, we began our new life. Although Lin Yu's father still harbored some reservations, seeing his daughter's happiness, he gradually came to accept the situation. A few months later, our child was born, a boy who looked just like Lin Yu. Father Lin held his grandson, his eyes filled with affection. Cheng Mo, Lin Yu leaned against my shoulder and whispered, Thank you for giving me a complete family. I lowered my head and kissed her forehead. I should be thanking you for making me the happiest man alive. Lin Yu's extra. From a young age, I knew my identity, the heir to the Lin Corporation. My father had high hopes for me. Ever since I can remember, my life was packed with all sorts of lessons and training. Piano, ballet, etiquette, business management. I had no childhood, only relentless learning and improvement. Until that day, in kindergarten, when I met Cheng Mo, he wore fancy clothes, his hair impeccably combed, like a proud little prince. We were assigned seats together. He glanced at me, his eyes filled with disdain. I hated his superior attitude, so when he wasn't looking, I snatched his toy. That was the first time I felt the thrill of mischief. Cheng Mo glared at me, his cheeks puffed out, but I just grinned triumphantly. From that day on, we began a war that lasted 20 years. I'd steal his toys, he'd tear up my homework. I'd snatch his projects, he'd sabotage my blind dates. We were like two hedgehogs, undeniably drawn to each other, yet always hurting one another with our quills. Until the day I heard he'd been in a car accident. When I rushed to the hospital, he was still unconscious. Looking at his pale face, I suddenly realized I could lose him forever. In that instant, my heart felt utterly hollowed out. When he woke up pretending to have amnesia, I decided to take a gamble. I lied and said we were a couple, wanting to use the opportunity to get closer to him and also to investigate whether the Chung family was connected to the fraud case from years ago. But I never expected this act to feel so real. His gentle gaze, his thoughtful gestures. I gradually began to lose myself. I began looking forward to seeing his face every morning when I woke up, began enjoying the breakfast he prepared for me, began depending on his warm embrace. I knew I shouldn't fall for him, but I couldn't control myself. Whenever he came near, my heart would race out of control. Whenever he smiled, my world would light up. That night, when he confessed everything, I felt both anger and relief. Angry at his deception, yet touched by his sincerity. I knew we had both lost ourselves in this act. The news of the pregnancy brought both joy and fear. I feared my father's reaction, feared that this relationship would harm the innocent child. But Cheng Mo's resolve gave me courage. When Father finally relented, I saw the tears glistening in his eyes. At that moment, I understood. Father's love had never changed. It had only been obscured by duty and hatred. On our wedding day, as I walked towards Chang'e-mo in my wedding dress, all the past melted into tears of joy. I knew we had finally found each other and found our true selves. Now, looking at the child in my arms, I am grateful to fate for bringing us together. Though the journey was tumultuous, in the end, we found our own happiness. Mama, Papa says you're the most beautiful woman he's ever seen. Smiling, I picked him up. Well then, Mama will tell you a secret. Papa is the most handsome man I've ever seen. Chang'e-mo hugged us from behind, whispering softly, "You two are the most precious gifts in my life." At this moment, I knew that all the waiting and perseverance had been worth it.